Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Alan Wake American Nightmare. Nightmare, handgun only, no damage. And I don't know if there's any other stipulations, because this is a project I recorded months ago and commentated months ago, and then like a simpleton managed to somehow delete the commentary. So I had to come back and do it again, and I really wasn't in the mood to do that. I'm one of those people that when I do something one time, I like it to be one and done. I like it to capture a moment, capture the magic of it, and I feel really uninspired and annoyed when I lose that. Even as much as it might not have been the best commentary I've ever done, it was special in its own unique way. So alas, we are here now, coming back months later to go back over this, because it is a good project and I did enjoy making it, and I want to share it with you kind people. You might notice that I sound a bit garbage. My throat is absolutely trash right now. I think I had some kind of infection or just really bad rundown throat thing going on. And if I make any disgusting noises, I make full apologies. Just pretend it's a DSP video and he's commentating and reacting to somebody who's significantly more skilled than he is. But this is going to be a supercut of all the encounters in the American Nightmare standalone Alan Wake game. And I recorded this directly after I beat the Alan Wake main game and the DLCs for YouTube. I was in a super big mood to play the series, and I wanted to try this. And when you play American Nightmare, you realise that there are some super huge differences between the first game and this one. And they make a massive difference too. Like, these are the kind of changes that fundamentally reshape how the game works. And you're going to be able to see them almost immediately if you know the series. And even if you don't, you're probably going to see them too. And I will say that the challenge on this one was nowhere near as tricky as the other ones I covered. However, it was more frustrating in a sense because there's a lot of weapons in this game. In the original Alan Wake, you only get a handful of tools to circumvent the Haunted with, who aren't called the Haunted, are they? That's Evil Within. What are these guys called? They're obviously the Darkness, aren't they? I forgot all the nomenclature here. This is kind of a tricky sequence if you get too embedded with it. So the enemies are called the Taken, right? That's what they're called. And we've got a handful here, and you'll notice there's some new archetypes in American Nightmare. They have a little bit more diversity here, as before it was kind of just the Scooby-Doo fisherman ghosts and all the woodchucks, wasn't it? And a couple of mechanics thrown in there. Well, now we kind of have the YMCA club taking part. We've got some biker dude, some big biker dude. We've got the sheriff guy. And then we've got that... Is it a lady? I don't quite know who it is. It looks like it might be some kind of Native American biker chick. She looks a little bit like... Is it Chloe from Uncharted 2? You know, the chick with the black hair? That person looks a little bit like her. Of course, it doesn't really matter because you're going to shoot them all without mercy anyway. That's kind of how the game works. And this initial sequence here on the first part is picking up items of power to start up that song and then to repeat the period of days so that you can get one step closer to taking on, I think he's called Mr. Scratch, who is the bad guy of this standalone DLC. And I think he looks really cool as well. He's played by the same person that does the body of Alan Wake again, and he's kind of like the dark half. It's really leaning on that Stephen King kind of influence there. But immediately the combat in this game is different, guys. I'm doing the exact same challenge I did in my previous series, where I will not be using batteries. I will be avoiding using batteries. I will only be using the handgun, and I will be trying my best not to get hit while I do so. And this game is different to Alan Wake, and you've probably noticed this. Not only are you in much less claustrophobic environments, and you're not getting spawned on the whole time with the glowing wind and the intimidating sound effects, it's a lot more solidified where things come from. It's nowhere near as atmospheric, it's nowhere near as dark, and this is a new enemy here. This is a creature known as the Splitter, where if you boost the torch on him, he splits into smaller pieces. And you can take him on as one dude and just shoot him a bunch, or you can split him into smaller guys, and the smaller guys take less bullets, and you can kill more of them that are weaker, or less of them that are stronger. It's kind of up to you. And it's kind of an interesting extension of an enemy that you don't really see that often, and I don't really like how it looks. I don't think it fits in with the theme of the game or the look of what I want the Taken to be, but at least they created a new enemy type for us to shoot at, and it does diversify the fights a little bit, if it is a little bit derivative. But you'll notice that the environments are much wider. They give you a lot of room here to get away from encounters, to space encounters. And because this entire sequence is kind of a sandbox, you can also go to familiar locations and bait them into light sources. And if you get to a light source that doesn't go out, you are pretty much invincible. And it's kind of interesting because the threat of the first game was so high at almost all moments, and then this game doesn't have that. And it doesn't have it for a few reasons. The first reason is because they've removed the ability for the Taken to throw things at you. And I don't know why they did that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not about to sit here and defend the ridiculous impossible aim of every single jobber in the first game who miracle Kobe'd an axe through a forest, dodged every tree, and hit you in the back of the head zigzagging. I'm not about to do that, but it must be said, guys, that I do think that this might have been the beginning of Remedy's slippery slope into overbalancing their games. And if you've ever watched any of my projects in the past and seen any of my commentaries, you'll know that I'm in love with Remedy as a company. I think they're amazing. I think they're one of the last bastions of single-player experiences that don't essentially exist to drive some kind of grander ideology. Most games nowadays are an excuse to keep you on those servers doing dailies, working towards a battle pass, working towards some kind of cryptocurrency, and then buying frivolous things you don't need that 10 to 15 years ago would have been in the game as unlockables. I don't like games like that too much. They frustrate me. They're essentially the death of the industry, and the next video game crash is coming because of these very practices. Instead of making games with soul and games that people enjoy and games that stand the test of times, we create these vice-laden instant gratification simulations that are a framework in order to just hit that vein of mediocrity and dopamine, right? And I don't buy that approach, and I don't think it has longevity as much as it is very financially lucrative. Remedy do their own thing, for better and for worse. They make a narrative that has a start, a middle, and an end, and if you play that full thing, you are going to get yourself a video game, and I really appreciate that. And when you think about it, when you look at some of the work that they've done their best to branch out and take creative aspects on giving you a single-player experience. They've done a TV show, you know, they've messed with all kinds of expectations, but the one commonality that seems to stretch through all of their work is that there's a video game underneath it all. And it might not be the flavour that you want. It might not be to the quality that you want. I still don't think they've made a better game than Max Payne. That's my humble opinion. I still love Alan Wake. I still love, Control and some of their other titles. But I do think that there's always a video game here, and there's always something worth seeing, even if you don't like it too much. And if you're interested in what I feel about Alan Wake in general, if you check out my no damage run of the main game and the DLCs, that pretty much sums up my feelings about Alan Wake. I was pretty much gushing about the game. I think it's superb. American Nightmare, I think, is a really, really cool arcadey distraction that enables you to really sink your teeth into the combat, and everything else is kind of not so great for me personally. And because I like the central feedback loop of Alan Wake's gameplay, I do like this a lot. And I do recommend it if you've never tried it. I am vexed as to why I didn't cover it on the channel at the time. This game came out when? Was it 2013, 2014, this add-on? And if you remember, I used it as an intro. I colour corrected one of the cutscenes, and then I put my logo on it, and it was one of my intros for a while. An intro that a lot of people really liked, myself included. But I didn't cover the game. And I honestly don't remember why that was. And if anybody here is one of those esoteric, clandestine superfans who's watched everything and remembers everything, if you can remember what I said back in the day, why I didn't go near this, I'd love to hear it, because it seems like such a no-brainer, but I just didn't for some reason. It could have been a weird time, it could have been other games taking priority. There was a reason there, and I didn't find it. But let's go over the gameplay. I mentioned that the areas are much larger, they give you a lot more space, and that they don't throw axes. So never being afraid of suddenly getting hit by a miracle axe takes the gameplay of Alan Wake from constant peril and constant vigilance to I am going to destroy every single one of you, and I'm going to have fun doing it because I am never in danger. And of course, I'm using a mouse and keyboard. You know, I've played video games before. I am quite capable when it comes to third-person shooters. You can still find yourselves in spots of bother if your awareness is not great or if your aim is bad. But fundamentally, all the difficulty in this DLC will come from you putting yourself in a bad situation rather than the situations themselves. And speaking of a bad situation, this one's kind of hairy. If you don't get to this pillar here, this thing will hit you. The more difficult areas to take no damage in all of this Nightmare add-on are the moments where you have to mess with anything that's possessed. Once again, it is a reoccurring mechanic of a poltergeist taking over an inanimate object, and you have to break the shroud on it with your torch, and then you can kill it and everything's great. And in this game, it's actually easier than it was in the previous one. If you remember in Alan Wake Under the Bridge, one of the hardest sequences in the game, that.
I think these are keys for the motel rooms.
Well, they changed the mechanics here. So not only did they change that the enemies don't throw things at you anymore, and they created an enemy that throws flashbangs instead, or dark flashbangs. Is that a dark bang? I don't know what that actually is. But if you watch here, guys, you notice how when I'm shining my torch on the Taken, it isn't decaying their shroud, it isn't removing their shield. They completely got rid of that. They got rid of the torch ambiently hitting shields, and now the only way to decay their protection is to boost your flashlight. And what they did instead is they made the flashlight a lot better by default. So the flashlight can be boosted for much longer, and it is a lot more powerful in getting rid of their defenses. And this was something that I didn't remember when I came back to record this. So by me doing no batteries on this, usually no batteries is a huge thing because it means I cannot get energy back into my torch, and I can't stop the enemies from being able to engage me, so I have to both balance my batteries, and I have to use my torch intelligently. And in the first game, that was quite demanding. In this game, it's not demanding at all. And another restriction is no HUD as well. I'm playing with no HUD, so you actually can't see any of these HUD assets that it's telling me this information, but luckily enough, the game is cool enough that you can kind of do it without. So now you cannot get rid of them by just looking at them, you have to boost them. But the boost lasts longer, and it seems to be more effective. And then when you compound that with how they change the sprinting, you now have Alan Wake the Hunter rather than Alan Wake the Hunted. So sprinting in this game has gone from being able to sprint for about 3 seconds in the previous game before slowing down and then having to keel over to you can sprint for about half a minute. I kid you not. It's so ridiculously empowering and overblown, I really don't know what they were thinking. And they made it pretty clear from the cutscenes, from the premise, from the setup, and from the marketing for this game, that this game was meant to be arcadey. It was meant to be kind of silly. And just then the enemies despawned, I don't know if you noticed that. One of the big issues with some of these encounters is if you position yourself in the wrong place, you will completely neutralize the fight without fighting it. And if you're looking for a walkthrough, guys, to get through the game and just beat it, you can do that, that's fine, you know, you can despawn the enemies, you can have a good time. I'm not looking to do that, this is a challenge. I want to fight everybody, I want to kill everybody, I want to have a good time, I want to bring you gameplay that you enjoy watching. I don't want my gameplay to be boring like a lot of channels on YouTube, you know, I want it to stand out. And if I run past every fight and avoid every encounter, it's not going to do that. So every so often, unfortunately, there are going to be moments where encounters just simply despawn. And we're kind of flitting around the areas here to the core components, and we have a new enemy, which are called time spiders in my mind, but have probably got some kind of interesting name that's hopefully cooler than time spiders. But what I can tell you is these guys are telegraphed, and one thing I really like about this enemy is that it breaks up the monotony of the standard enemy types. I don't particularly think it's a good match, I don't particularly think that there's something I would have wanted in an Alan Wake, and if you remember in the first game, one of my critiques was that I really thought it would be a good idea for them to have more possessed animals, but in the first game you only take on possessed crows. And then if you watch the making of for Alan Wake, you can see that the developers looked into doing all kinds of possessed animals, but it just didn't kind of work when it came to the animation and the rigging and how they could make them function. So they ended up not doing them. I think they had aspirations of doing maybe a possessed bear or a possessed elk or something like that, maybe wolves. There was probably a whole bunch of ideas that they had, because it writes itself, doesn't it? Whereas in this game, we do get another enemy type, and it is another animal, but it's a spider. And I don't know about you guys, I'm not the biggest fan of spiders. When I was younger, I used to have a real difficulty with them in games. It was straight up Jeff Daniels arachnophobic, and right there was a very clutch dodge. That guy snuck up on me and made almost no sound, but Alan's telling me that they're on me now. Do you see his head? This is what's good about games like this, guys. This is what's good about everything post, was it Resident Evil 2? I think that was the origins of that. It might have been earlier, who knows, but somebody very smart came up with the idea of the game telling you that something is sneaking up on you so it doesn't feel as cheap. And right there, Alan turned his head, and because I'm paying attention, I know someone's behind me. And just then, I also know someone's behind me, and I can turn around and boost my torch on this enemy right here, this fireman, who's carrying a sickle. I don't know who he's going to be rescuing from a fire with a sickle, but maybe it's one of the children of the corn. But that right there is mechanical richness. It's what makes Alan Wake fun. It's one of the reasons why I really like this game. In as much as I think the gimmick and the framing device of the Groundhog Day angle, and I think the 8 locations that you go to, are pretty much terrible. I find the environments really boring in this game for some reason, because they're not knitted together in that usual Remedy manner. But when I'm fighting, I don't mind. Because I play these games for fighting, guys. I play them for the combat. And now we're doing some of the objectives. The objectives here are interesting. Every time you come back to this location, and I think you do it 3 to 4 times, you have to do something slightly iteratively different than the first time you were here. And it all builds towards being able to free yourself from this event. And then at the end, spoiler alert, it turns out I think that this is an episode of Night Springs, isn't it? It's kind of like a pseudo prequel to Alan Wake in some ways. Do not quote me on that, guys. That might be way off. You might have to check the wiki, but to give you an idea, the start of this year when I was covering Alan Wake, I was all up on that stuff. I knew all of these things, but it has simply just gone from my brain. And that right there is an interesting mechanic. I believe this is meant to be a manifestation of Mr. Scratch, because this kind of undulating darkness turns up every so often for a narrative purpose, but it's also it's effable too. So if you touch it, it hurts you. It's not like it's some kind of spectral thing running around doing narrative triggers. You go near this thing, it will hurt. And there's a couple of moments in the game where you can take damage off it, and I don't really get that personally, but there it is. And that I got really lucky just then. Whew. I got a really nice bounce on the geometry, and I think it flew off the edge. But these are the most difficult parts of this entire project. It's the moments with the possessed items, and if you can just skip them, I usually recommend you do that. Because your torch is good in this game, you kind of lean on it a bit heavier than you did in the first one, but that leads to these moments where you've leaned on it so much, if you take on another enemy that's got a lot of shroud on it, you're not going to be able to do much before your batteries run out. And if you listened earlier, a couple of moments ago, I did go through my batteries. I say batteries, I went down my single battery that I'm using. And then you've got to wait for the full thing to recharge, you see, so it's not quite as good. But there was a prototype. If you don't know the story about this game, I went over it on stream for the people that remember. Oh, if you were there. But then there was a prototype that Remedy came up for a sequel for Alan Wake, because Alan Wake was always meant to be a story that continued. Remedy had a good idea of what they wanted to do with it, and they thought they had something cool, and they'd spent so long and gone through so many production woes to bring Alan Wake 1 to us. You'll notice that if you look at this game, guys, it doesn't have the atmosphere, it doesn't have the visuals, it doesn't have that level of detail and that richness that the first game has. The first game is this wonderful sandbox of fully realised technology all coming together by sheer necessity because they've been working on it for so long and iterating on it for so long. Whereas this game, the lighting looks different, the effects look different, it just looks like a completely different tone, because it is, and it's meant to be, you know. But that first game, the detail, just the sense of the situation and establishing Bright Falls is such a cool aspect of Alan Wake. And when you play this, it feels completely and utterly gone. And once again, it's good for what it is, but you really do feel that absence. It feels like you're missing out on that premier version of Remedy's vision. And the reason it came to be is because of the prototype that they made. So Alan Wake 2 was sent around a bunch of publishers, I think, and they were trying to get the funding to do it, and it seems like at that moment in time, because of maybe the reception of Alan Wake... Oh, another thing as well, guys, watch this. See that? They massively nerfed the flashbangs in this DLC. In the first game, if you throw a flashbang, it was essentially a nuke. It killed everything. It was so strong, I pretty much avoided using it outside of areas where I wanted to make quick work of something awkward. Whereas in this, because the flashbangs are so garbage, they're quite fun to use. They feel balanced. They feel like something that you can lean on a little bit to give you a breathing moment, but nothing too insane. And I do think that Alan Wake 1 would have been a better game if the flashbangs in that game were the same as this one, because it would have made it a bit more challenging and a bit more difficult. But one of the things you might not have realised, if you went back to the remaster, guys, and you found it quite difficult, is because they changed the difficulty in that version of the game. They made normal hard, so they made the game challenging by default, and they didn't tell anybody. This was kind of hairy, wasn't it? I don't know how he managed to get away with that. But there's the flare coming out, the beautiful effect of the flare, and giving me the moments I need to survive. And then we're going to come back over here and hit this door. Nothing too crazy this. You do get ambiently spawned on around here, so be a little careful if you can. But you can always boost them to stop them, and then trigger the cutscene and get on with your life. I'm not going to kill every single enemy, especially when it's places where I've already killed them and they've just respawned. But this leads us to our first big encounter, which is inside this observatory. This is a really cool fight as well. And look at that, because you know they spawn on that lower area, you can dump those flares, and as they're standing up, their shrouds are just getting decimated. It's really, really cool. I think all the fights in this DLC are pretty awesome. I don't think there's one of them I could complain about. There's one checkpoint I don't like, which I'll talk about when it comes up. But other than that, I think they did a really good job with making these feel like there's something happening without them feeling too cheap. Because there's the temptation in Alan Wake for them to spawn everybody behind you while you're fighting. So you turn around and there's a bunch of dudes about to whack you. And then in the first game, of course, if they threw all the bloody axes at you while it was happening, you always had to be moving. You always had to be treating it as if at any moment you were about to get sniped. And personally, I didn't like that. I really didn't. But I think without it, the game is worse. Because I feel like there's nothing to fear here. The only thing I have to worry about is getting snuck up on, and even then, I'm not going to get just randomly damaged by somebody throwing something, because I know that threat no longer exists. And without that threat, it does not feel as intense. And if you're going to make, you know, psychological horror, if you're going to make a game that is about survival against these dark entities, there has to be tension. There has to be the understanding that at any moment something could go bad. And many games get this right. Alan Wake 1 got it wrong, but it got it wrong because it cranked it too much. They were too good with the axes, they threw them too much. Whereas if they could have just gone in and gave them a cooldown, made it so that they do a deliberate animation of pulling it out and making a noise, and then making it not track so well or have such good range, they could have made it a lot more balanced. But if it hits you, it does a ton of damage, you know. You can make it do more damage, but make it easier to dodge, instead of it just being this thing that pecks at you a ton. And I would have had it so that they could only throw so many items, you know. You could have had mechanics that had tool belts on, and they might have had 2 wrenches in those belts, and they can loose one of those wrenches and throw them at you. But if they throw the wrench, they only have 1 wrench left. They can't just keep doing it, you know. And that is always the problem with any kind of projectile in a game. There's this wonderful finite balance between where do you draw the line so that it's demanding on your players of all skill levels, not just, you know, your bad players and not just your great players. But where does that line get to the point where one of those parties has to suffer? Because who knows, maybe you played this game and you found the pressure from the Taken to be very challenging and that it accomplished what they were looking for. I didn't, you know, and that's important to me. Like, I'm coming back to this game to cover it because I want to do some Alan Wake stuff, you know. Alan Wake is cool. Alan Wake 2 has been announced. It's coming in 2023. We've got some time to wait, but I'm very excited about it. I have a horrible feeling it's going to be first person. I'm absolutely terrified it's going to be first person, and that's kind of funny, right? Because I like first person games, but Resident Evil changed things, dude. Resident Evil 7 scares me because it's set this precedent of survival horror games being first person with fucking horrible controls, and I don't want a first person game with horrible controls. That is the one thing that pisses me off more than almost anything. I've already played that game. It's called fucking Killzone 2, and I didn't enjoy it there, and I won't enjoy it now, even with a mouse and keyboard. But here we have another splitter. I really like the splitter because it's an opportunity to start messing around with your aim and shooting on some dudes. But we're going to be moving down into an area to power up the drive-in location, and this is the more difficult sequence in American Nightmare, but it isn't on this particular time we visit it. It's coming up later on. This area's just got a lot of dudes knocking about, and there's some interesting guns you can use to take them down with. I could have been pedantic too, guys. There's a Desert Eagle in this. I think there might even be like a Magnum as well, like a big old Dirty Harry Magnum, 44 Magnum. There's also the pistol from the first game. And technically, if I do handguns only, Desert Eagle is a handgun. However, I would imagine if you collect enough pages to get the Desert Eagle, it is a very, very, very destructive weapon, and it would mitigate a lot of the challenge I'm trying to go for here. But we got a couple guys, couple Taken, pushing us here. Be very careful of the conductors around you, of these generators. I don't actually know what they're called, these. Some kind of power generators, power coils. But if you go too close to the cables, you can be electrocuted and it will do damage. And again, as in previous Alan Wake games, going into the light will give you a checkpoint, so if you need a little bit of help, it'll also help you regen, it will also help the enemies despawn. There's so much safety in the light in these games, and it's a wonderful balance, I think, between the good and the evil aspect of the whole theme of the game. But there's a puzzle in here with these switches, and once again, it's different depending on every time you visit. And what I've done there, guys, is I've edited out me pulling the levers, but I've enabled the final lever pull to be in there so you can see the correct alignment and then just do the puzzle that way. And the first thing that happens too is we get this big hillbilly with the massive sledgehammer there, and I just wait for him and use the barrel. There's a lot of environmental hazards that you can use to your advantage here, so you should use them. Once again too, whenever you see the exposure blow out like that, it symbolises that you're killing the final enemy in the area, and that you will have some downtime to proceed onwards and see what's going on in the rest of the game. It's another one of those things that you don't think about, but your brain sees it. And it's very, very important to have that kind of information and that kind of feedback. And some games do that badly. Some games will give you a tell to tell you it's the end of the fight, but it's not. And then you'll think it's the end of the fight, you'll let your guard down, and then you'll end up getting hurt by something that was lingering on the edge of the battlefield. And it's the difference between good devs and bad devs, basically. Something as fundamental as something telling you you are safe should always be accurate. It should never be ambiguous. And when a game messes that up, that's one of my biggest pet peeves, that messing up on established fundamentals is inexcusable to me. But there's Mr. Scratch, looking suitably 360, and he's introducing the new enemy here, and this guy's the reason why the Taken do not throw axes at you. So this guy is some kind of special forces, or I don't even know what's going on. He's some kind of survivalist dude that's been living in a bunker hoarding resources, and he has an unlimited supply of dark flashbangs. So flashbangs filled with the Taken's darkness from the dark place. And he will just keep lobbing them and repeatedly lob them. And it introduces you to the interesting metagame of you can use his grenades to kill the Taken, you can corral them together, stun them with your torch, and then bait him to throw a bomb, and he will deal with the enemies for you. So you can use him as pretty much the most destructive thing in the game, because they kill very consistently. And one of the things you'll notice in this is, of course, he's using a Beretta in this game instead of using the revolver from the previous game. And the pistol gets more ammunition, but it seems to be a little bit weaker at times because you can fire it a lot faster. And that's one of the things where the trade-off is with this particular tool. I personally really like that he's got a different gun. I also like that he's got a different outfit too. Although I am lamenting a little bit the fact that he doesn't wear the outfit from the demo that they did for Alan Wake 2. Which, I started talking about that, didn't I? And I don't think I finished that conversation. So to do that, to sum it up quickly, guys, here, they made a demo for Alan Wake 2. It looked awesome. They were Taken throwing axes and then ripping them out of cars and stuff and dynamically doing all kinds of weird things. Alan had a big coat on. It looked cool as hell. There was all kinds of cool things happening. But nobody wanted to fund it. Nobody wanted to publish it. And I don't particularly remember the reasons for it, but it's probably something tragic, and it's not FIFA, it's not Call of Duty, fuck you kind of reasons. So what ended up happening, because they had to shelve the project and do something else, which then went on to be something like Quantum Break, I would imagine, they did this. They used the technology that they'd made in that particular demo, they toned it down from the ambitious visuals or whatever they were going for, that kind of next-gen Alan Wake, and they used those resources that they'd built for that vertical slice, and they turned it into this arcade release. And I think that that's absolutely awesome. I really do. It's nowhere near as good fidelity-wise as what they showed in that trailer. It's nowhere near as sick as it would have been if it was a fully fledged, AAA production for 3 to 5 years. But they did a great job of essentially kind of retrofying and downscaling this ambitious dream of a sequel into something that they could give to the players as just a little bit of a holdover before the next Alan Wake information. And lo and behold, it turned out to be 10 years that we had to wait, and we could have been waiting that 10 years with nothing but the original game, so at least we got something from it. And looking back, I think they did a great job with this. And I bought it with Microsoft points as well, and I didn't feel ripped off. I did all the challenges and whatnot, I got all the achievements, I had a good time with it. But I would have really liked to have seen a different handgun, personally. I think he should have had a Glock. I mean, insert the handgun you think he should have. He could have had a handful of different ones. You don't want to go too crazy or too exotic, you know. He's not some crazy gun aficionado. He doesn't come from some foreign country that's got some crazy special forces options that you wouldn't get access to. But they could have given him a Glock, right? That would have been sick. And you might be wondering, what's wrong with the Beretta, Chris? Don't you like the 92 FS? Well, I'll have you know, sir, that I adore the goddamn Beretta. The Beretta is what I cut my teeth on, you know? It's a beautiful piece of engineering. The problem with it is, the Beretta's the gun that Max Payne uses. And there's the conflict, you know? I don't know if you like me, guys. I like guns. I also like characters. And I like characters being distinguishable between other characters. To me, Alan Wake uses a revolver, you know? He uses some cylinder-driven tool of death, you know? You could have given him all kinds of different variants on the revolver, but it does make sense that after the first Nightmare, he would want a bit more modern firepower, right? He would want something that's capable of dealing with multiple targets efficiently, and modern technology is always going to be your go-to with that. It wouldn't surprise me if he was rocking like a fucking MP7. Alan has earned his right to have a personal defense weapon, because he's gone into some serious shit and managed to survive. But there's something about the cohesion of design there where when you think of Alan, you think of the coat, you think of that revolver, you know, you think of the pages. This is interesting too. So going back to that demo, the Alan Wake 2 early demo that they showcased had a creature like this, but in the demo it was way better. It was so much better. It kind of reminded me of Mimic, which, if you've never seen that movie, Mimic is a movie about this series of bugs that essentially were introduced to eradicate another type of bug by imitating them and then taking over and killing and whatnot. And I can't remember the full story. It's been a long time since I watched the movie. But essentially, they did their job so well that they started seeing humans as the new threat. And instead of imitating the insects, they started imitating us. And the idea of this movie is that there's these kind of like homeless dudes wearing coats who are stood in dark alleyways, not talking, like stood like all twitching and being weird, and it's kind of unnerving. And it turns out they're not humans at all, they're these bugs. And it's this horror movie with Mira Sorvino in it. I think it might have had, is it Guillermo del Toro that directed it? It's a cool movie, I recommend it. I have not seen it in a long time, I should really watch it again. But the Birdmen in that trailer, they look like homeless guys in long coats. And they stood there all intimidating and all kind of eerie. And then they broke apart into birds. And they flew around and then they reassembled back into that kind of dirty, homeless guy. And that motif to me is awesome. I just think it's fantastic visually. I think it's very striking. It really does hit some creative heartstrings with me. And I have no idea why they turned him into these emaciated crack pipe, like sex dungeon, bootleg Poundland Nosferatus with the Widow's Peak. But they've gone from this really intimidating, crazy kind of homeless guy to whatever the hell that dude is. It looks like Vamp if he was being cosplayed by somebody who was on a budget. And we're talking, you know those people who, there's a TV show, isn't there, called something like Extreme Cheapskates or something? You know those guys that dry out their toilet paper when they've used it so they can use it again, and they collect like their fucking toenails and shit in a jar because you might need it for some obscene reason. We're talking that level of frugality, and that dude tried to make a cosplay, and that's what he came up with. And speaking of, we have another one of them here, so they are signified by the birds. And do you remember at the start of this where I said we're stepping into the territory of Remedy and their patent for overbalancing their games into oblivion? So this is another great example of it. Do you remember the birds in the first game? They were dangerous. There's a boss fight against the birds where I hid on a porch because if I didn't do that, I had to react to the birds really quickly, and sometimes it was very hard to do. So I found a safer strat and I used it. Well, in this game, you will never get hit by these monsters because they are so easy and so fair that they do not even remotely pose any threat. They are so overbalanced that they should come at you while you're being attacked by Taken because it's the only way they get to stand a chance. And that's what it is. You remember on picking teams when you did any kind of PE? You're going to play football at PE. 2 guys get to pick teams. You know those kids that got picked last because everybody knew they sucked ass and nobody wanted them on the teams? I do apologise, it's very isolatory, it's very prejudiced, it's not nice in 2022, but this is what happened. This is just tribalism at its work right here, right? You wanted to win, you were competitive, you were young, you had the mind of a fucking killer, you didn't want sheep on your team, right? Well, that's what these guys are. These bird dudes are sheep trying to play the sport, and no one's picking them. And everybody else are trying to have a good time. So it leads it to these situations where they really needed to change this design, but they didn't. And here's the crutch, right? He will fly around in bird form, and he will never attack you. Never. He can't. They've taken away the bird's most dangerous attribute, which is when they dive bomb you. And he has to materialize, and then run towards you, and then attack you. And what happens is, because the birds are never a threat, you don't have to even look at them, you don't even have to pay attention. When they come together, it makes a distinct noise, and then because he runs towards you, you can burst him with the torch, stun him with the boost, and then light him up, and he flies away. So you are never ever in any danger with that monster as long as you can shine your torch on him once. And there's a problem with that, in my opinion. He needed to be worked into such a way where he is tricky and dangerous if you take your eyes off him. But as he stands, he is completely worthless. And it's really sad too, because the idea of him is cool. The way he's implemented is far too fair. And this leads us to a fascinating discussion on how sometimes games being fair doesn't necessarily lead to games being fun. And coming from me, that's kind of an interesting discussion because I'm always talking about fairness. I'm always talking about balance. I'm always talking about design that can be conquered decisively without cheapening the player experience. And it's very hard to do that, I think. It's the hardest thing in design. But like, look at this right now. I can walk backwards here into the entire desert, and these enemies can't do anything as long as I stun them with my torch. They can't catch me. They can't throw anything. The biggest danger is when they charge like that. That's dangerous. That right there is good design. He has a move that deals with me at range. The problem is, I have so much mobility because of the sprint and because of the space that I can simply kite him and he's never a problem. And if I put anything between me and him, he will never be able to go past it. And this is where it falls apart, you see. The biggest danger in this DLC with the combat is running out of bullets. Because the enemies take a lot of damage and there's a lot of them, you know? And stuff like that. Right there, that was quite dangerous. But I don't understand why they could make so many things in Alan Wake 1 so devilish, and then so many things in this, essentially, are laughable. It's almost like they're pacifists. It's like they're trying to throw the match. They're just dragging their heels so you can win. And now we get 2 splitters and a sheriff just to the right there. And I stick the flare out to split them all up, and then we're going to shoot them with the gun. A couple of the checkpoints here are really shit, by the way. You want to be super careful with retrying if you want to do this, because one of the things I do a lot on these projects, guys, is when I do a fight and I don't think it's exciting enough, or if I'm missing too much, or if it's just not being the usual pace, I want the fights to be interesting. I want them to feel aggressive. I want them to feel like I'm going out there and I'm taking it to the enemy, you know? I don't want to just run away the whole time. So if the fight's lame, essentially, I'll go back in and re-record it so that I can get something a bit more visually stimulating. And sometimes it doesn't work so well, because sometimes you have to do way more than you bargained for. And that's the type of stuff that's really frustrating. I've been recording something recently, which you're going to see probably like 3 months from now. And there was a boss on it that I had to kill. And I was using a cheat engine to revive the boss, right? Because I was practicing against him. I accidentally killed him. I revived the boss. And then I can practice again and I can record and I can get the footage for YouTube. And that's awesome, right? You don't have to worry about killing the boss. You can just revive it. It's really easy. Well, I fought against one boss where when I did one of the things that changes the game state when you do it, I went to revive the boss and it saved the game state, so I couldn't go back to before I'd done the attempt. And I ended up making a mistake, so I couldn't capture it. So in that instance, I had to start a new game and get to that boss. And because the particular strategy I was doing was really annoying, and it took me like 5 attempts to do it, I had to start a new game 5 times in a row, get all the way to a boss, just so I could go in and do this gimmicky bullshit fight. And that's the type of stuff that, it just makes you not want to do it, you know? It makes you not want to record. It's not that you don't have the ability. It's not that you're not capable. It's that the game is doing everything it can to make you turn it off. And there was a couple moments like that in this, but nowhere near to that extent, where you just kind of wonder, why would they checkpoint like that? Why would they make it work like that? And you do have a good excuse in this one, because you can use the lights to give yourself your own checkpoints, but for cohesion in editing, I like to keep it as what the game gives you, what it intends to give you, and work with it that way. And one of the big things that happened here, which you'll probably, if you know this DLC well, you'll understand that this is a bit jarring here, because I'm running around this area doing this objective, and because I'm running a lap around the base, the enemies are respawning, and I'm doing fights that you don't have to do here. So if you're watching this video, guys, and you're playing along with it, and you get to this next objective, and you're like, hang on a second, Chris is fighting all these extra dudes, what's happening here? It just means that I took a bit longer than you did running around, and I spawned a bunch more encounters. And it's cool for a video, because you get to see me do more fighting. I mean, if you're not enjoying the game, you're probably watching this and thinking, wow, this looks really boring, I don't get how you enjoy it, Chris, but... I don't know if I've talked about that guy as well, that could be an interesting topic for the video. And I do apologise if this is a bit scatterbrained. I fervently believe, guys, the first time you do a commentary, if you're good at it, it's the best you'll do. It really is. Unless you're tripping over your words and saying the wrong things and like stuttering or something and you have to stop and tweak like that, I think the first thing you were going to do, the gut reaction that you were going to do, is going to be the best. And that's coming from somebody that's done this for over a decade. I've spent over 10 years talking to myself at length. And I truly believe now, I've always thought this after maybe the first year or two, I just think there's something about that first go where everything starts to fire. And that might just be me, that might be my style, that might be me projecting. But I can't think of any instance where my second commentary attempt has ever been as strong as the first one. And the reason is my personality. Because I've just talked about the game a ton and told you a bunch of information, I can't say it again. I don't like repeating myself. I don't like saying the same story repeatedly. I don't like saying the same anything repeatedly if I can avoid it. So it leads me to trying to paraphrase what I've said, forgetting the heart and the meat of what I've said, losing a good 40 minutes of what I was probably talking about, and instead we talk about a movie I've just watched, or we talk about a CD, or we talk about another game, or we talk about a YouTuber, which is what I'm about to do right now. And this is the problem. It's not to say that there's not value in this right now, and if you just listen to me recreationally and enjoy the videos, then this is probably everything you want and you're having a good time. But if you're here wanting me to talk about Alan Wake, you're probably frustrated, and I'm frustrated too, because that first one I did, I talked all about the game, because it was fresh and I was into it. And it's my fault that, guys, and I do apologise, but instead I'm going to talk about a YouTuber that's fucking retarded. And no, it's not who you think. So I was looking for Alan Wake videos when I was doing the editing for this, because I like to see what people do. Whenever I do a project, I like to check on YouTube to see what the competition is. And I say that rather optimistically, because let's face it, my channel is so fucking dead right now that the only competition that I can realistically view as competition is probably like black and white televisions, because it just ain't happening, is it? It's just not the place to be. But I like to see what people have done, to see where I stack up against on their gameplay, on their quality, on the challenges and things. And when I was looking for Alan Wake, I saw a bunch of no damage runs, which is to be expected. I saw some no damage runs and they were cool. I saw some just standard playthroughs, standard walkthroughs, that kind of fare. I saw a couple of interesting comparison videos about the remaster and the standard version for the base game. We're talking base game here, guys, not American Nightmare, of course. And then I saw this guy, and I cannot remember his name, unfortunately. You don't want to watch this, trust me, guys. It's enough to get your blood up. It was very irritating, but I found it hilarious. So there was a guy who made a video. It was like, Alan Wake's combat is terrible. That was the name of it, something along those lines. And I watched this video because when somebody says that, I'm curious. I like to critique things. I like to shit on things. I like to say I don't like this, and here's why. And I like to explain my feelings on it, and you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, you can not care. You know, it's up to you. I am always fascinated by perspectives that are different to mine, especially when it comes to something I disagree with. So I quite like the combat in Mass Effect. Yeah, we're talking about Mass Effect, Chris. That was a great one. Mass Effect, great game. No, I do like the combat in Mass Effect, but I like the combat in Alan Wake. I think it's simplistic. I think it needed developing. I think it's underbaked. But I think it's fun, and I think it's got good feedback, and there's enough to sink your teeth into it to make it interesting. I can't really think of any reason why anybody would think that the combat was terrible. I can't. I can understand you not liking it. I can understand you thinking it's repetitive and boring. I get that. That I get. But thinking it's terrible tells me that you're looking at the mechanics, which I have analysed far deeper than you have, for far longer, and I've come up with the conclusion that regardless of how I feel and what I like, Alan Wake is mechanically sound. Objectively. Subjectively, I think it's great. Objectively, it is mechanically good, right? It functions, it does what it set out to do, it enables a player to use the tools within its systems to circumvent any situation, except for the final boss, when you try and do handgun only, because then you have to fire a flare gun. What's that about, Sam? Come on, Sam. Anyhow, like, look at this right now. Right now, I have the tools to get out of this situation without being hit, because this game facilitates those tools. So in my mind, when I see a video like that, I think that this guy is going to go off on one and just essentially start talking about Heaven's Gate and catching comets. And it turns out, as I suspected, he's a terrible player. And here's the thing, right, guys? You don't have to be a great player to critique something. You don't have to be a great player to critique something and have valid points. However, it really helps if you know what you're doing to make your criticisms shine, because then when somebody comes who knows what they're doing and watches what your critiques are, they don't look at them and go, yeah, you're garbage. And we live at a time on the internet which is really unfortunate, which is this get-good mentality, this get-good culture. So when you critique something like Dark Souls, like Elden Ring, which I do every day, people say get good. People say, oh yeah, mad cause bad, right? And I don't necessarily think that's always the case, although I do think there's probably a rather large amount of times when it is. But this idea that you're bad at a game, your critiques don't matter as much, is always an interesting topic of discussion. And I do think that there is some validity to it. I really do. But this was different. This was really different, right? The guy in this video who does not like Alan Wake's combat, this dude was shooting at the Taken's shroud. Just think about that, right, guys? So regardless of what your critique is, when you want to start saying why something is mechanically bad, when the first thing you're doing tells me that you did not do the tutorial, and if you did, you didn't listen, and if you did listen, you didn't learn. And that, to me, kills all credibility of your argument. The integrity is gone. And if you're just tuning in, guys, I don't know how that would happen, but you never know, it can. And you're wondering, well, how are you supposed to know not to shoot at the enemy's shrouds? Well, the very first thing it does in that game is tell you the Taken are protected by darkness. You use your flashlight to slow them down and break their defenses. When their defense is off, you can then engage them and kill them. That is the first thing the game teaches you. It gives you a flashlight with no bullets, right? No gun. Flashlight, no gun to show you the torch so you can break a shroud. Here's a shroud. This is a defense. Don't shoot it, right? Shine your torch on it. Boom, it broke. Look at that. Isn't it great? You've learned a mechanic. Now here's a gun. Now you've got a gun. What do? Shoot the shroud? No, you don't shoot the shroud. That's retarded. You use the torch, you break the barrier, you shoot the guy. Isn't that fantastic, right? That's how the game works. That's literally the basics. That's running forward in Mario and jumping across a gap. There's no difference there. It is a established fundamental, and it is the first tutorial you receive. You will then spend the rest of the game doing this. And the best part that I found from this video is the dude in that video. He wasn't at the start of the game. He wasn't in the dream. He wasn't in the opening area. He was going towards the blackmailer on the mountain where you have to do the defense with the torch only. He was there. He was going through that famous tree where the hunting rifle is, where you get attacked by the dude with the big axe. which means he'd gone all the way through the mountainside, all the way through that cliffside, all the way through the lumberyard, all the way through like the first boss, and doing all that section without realizing shooting shrouds is a bad idea. And then when you watch more of the gameplay, you realize he's not dodging, and when he is dodging, he's dodging at bad times. So he's never getting the actual cinematic dodge that keeps you alive, because he's not timing his dodges, he's just mashing, or he's brain dead just thinking about it, or not doing it in general. He's not prioritizing targets correctly. He's essentially getting tunnel visioned on one enemy, getting snuck up on, mashing roll to get away from them, and then shooting shrouds and then getting hit while he's shooting at them because he's not slowing them down correctly. And I can bang on this guy all day. You know, it's fun. But it doesn't help us. And it doesn't help us because when you critique something, guys, even if you're wrong, you can believe you're right. That's your personal obligation. You can do that. And you can still have a kind of valid, kind of decent delusional argument, you know? I recently got critiqued, by somebody that really likes The Surge. I did a blind playthrough of The Surge, and I didn't like the game. This guy went into my blind playthrough and like analysed a ton of things and told me what I could have done, what I should have done, and what I didn't know. That right there is interesting, and I found it quite cool. And I said to that guy, as much as this is great, you're wasting your effort on me because I don't like The Surge. I'm never going to like The Surge, and what you're doing here would go down much better with somebody who's going to be thankful for it and wanting to change their perspective, right? I'm not. I hate that game. I'll never play that game again. So a lot of my critiques of that game, if I were to become better at it and understand it better, they may prove to be flawed. They may prove to be wrong, completely wrong critiques. But in my heart right now and in my brain, those critiques are completely valid and they are law to me. They are how I see the world, how I build my perception. So right there, I don't know if what that guy said in those critiques is valid, and what he says about what I'm saying is got any merit at all. I don't understand, because I don't know, and I don't really care. But I don't know, you know, so I could have a bunch of bullshit wrong beliefs about how the Surge works because of my mechanical misunderstanding. And I'm okay with that, you know. I'm okay dying on that hill across that game that I'll never go near again. So you can have bad opinions and bad takes on things, bad appraisals, while still doing it in a rather elegant and thought out way. There's nothing wrong with that fundamentally, because at the end of the day, a lot of these takes are people essentially thinking they're right, not wanting anybody to tell them they're wrong, and just kind of get that out into the universe. That's just one of the things that happens. Oh, by the way, guys, these enemy spawners here, these I don't even know what they are. They're these debris that are born into these spires. If you break all three of them, it kills all the enemies that are around this area. And when I was originally recording this, I got a couple of capture errors on these sequences, so I had to come back and do these again. And I don't really like doing that, but I want the quality of the footage to be as good as possible. So that's the type of thing that you've got to do, you know, there's no two words about it. And on my first footage of this, I did all these fights without breaking the spires pretty much. I killed all the enemies around them, and then I did them. But coming back on that re-recording, because I didn't want OBS to error out, I just went directly for the spawning points and just got rid of them. And there was some really cool gameplay there, and you couldn't see half of any of it, because it was just crashing on the screen. One of the big frustrations of doing what we do when things go wrong. This is a cool sequence, though. This is way fairer than you think it would be. There's almost no reason for you to lose here if you play it correctly, and that's what I really like about the game. But going back to what we were saying with that video and this idea of you can be wrong and still critique something and still do it in a way that has merit, that guy is critiquing Alan Wake's combat and calling it terrible because he doesn't understand it and he's trying to force a square peg in a circular hole. And he's wrong. He's completely wrong, and his gameplay is really funny. But that's the type of player that you're never going to get through to. And the reason I found this person, to give you some real context here, this is where it gets really good. A friend of mine put up a video of, I think it was Elden Ring. I think it was something in Elden Ring that wasn't so great. Yeah, it was a level 1 Elden Ring video. Oh, by the way, guys, this is a new enemy type, this. It's this huge lumbering ogre man, troll guy. And once again, I knew the names of all these things when I was first here, but I forgot what they are. I was disappointed by this guy's name as well. I thought it would be something really cool, and it's not. I was hoping it was going to be some kind of cousin from Sloth from the Goonies, but alas, it's just a dude with a massive circular saw and an absurd health pool. And the idea here is if you shine your torch at him with the boost, he tries to block the light with the machine, and then when he lowers it, he moves towards you. So you repeatedly rinse his slowdown by shining the torch and shooting him, and he takes an absurd amount of damage. He takes a really large amount of bullets. That was my final bullet right there, and I killed him, so I got pretty lucky. But I did have flashbangs just in case. But we're moving into the final part of the game here, and it is escalating appropriately. But I'm running out of my battery power, so I'm going to have to back up a little bit. And you'd think that the fire here would help you with breaking the shrouds, but it really doesn't seem like it does. That's me shooting a shroud right there, guys, because I thought I'd broke it, and I haven't. So, shout out to our friend on the video there. Chris is doing the same thing with twinsies. It's him again! Sneaky bastard! But my friend was doing a level 1 run on Elden Ring. And this person who made this Alan Wake video was in the comment section on her video saying that you're not level 1, your stats are too high. Which is kind of interesting, right, when you think about that. You've probably already spotted the problem with this logic and this person in general. There are items in Elden Ring that enable you to increase your statistics without leveling up. They're talismans that do it. Some of them are really powerful too. These talismans have existed since Dark Souls 3. This player doesn't know that though, and they think they do, which is the scary part about this whole conversation. So, this person critiques her level 1 video with absolutely no understanding or awareness of the greater mechanics of that game. And then when she takes the piss out of them, which I would have done, the person then goes on to say that they are a Triple Souls Platinum Veteran. I shit you not. Can you imagine, guys? Triple Souls Platinum Veteran. Self-professed. I can't even fathom the brain that comes up with that, right? Because if you don't know me from Adam, know one thing. I respect power. I'm like Rao from Fist of the North Star. His values are my values. I don't care what you say, I care what you can do. And if you have proof, that's all I ask. I want to see it, you know? So to me, if you've done something really impressive in a game, I will respect you. You've earned my respect. If you say you've done really impressive things in games, I don't give a single fuck about you, and I'll tell you to be quiet and sit on the kids' table. Adults are speaking. Because I do not respect you. That's just the fundamentals of it, right? I love people who back up what they say. And I love people that do great things. That's what this entire community is built on. And I'm not a big fan of these people that want to tell you that they have way more experience than they do because they have an overinflated image of themselves. One of the cool things about making walkthroughs for so long, guys, is I kind of killed the part of my ego that thought I was hot shit. You know? When you start doing this, you think you're pretty good and you want to share some gameplay and people say you're pretty good and you think, I am pretty good, you know, it's kind of cool, it's kind of edifying. But I got over that really quickly, and it was never something that I did for it in the beginning, you know. I never made these videos so people could tell me I had a big dick. I don't care about that. I make these videos because they're fun and people enjoy them, and sometimes they can help, you know. So I don't really understand the perspective of being like, I'm this god at games, I've done all these amazing things, and I don't lead off my introductions to strangers with, hi there, I beat Dark Souls at level 1, what's your name? Because that's fucking stupid, right? And don't get me wrong, I like to wave my e-dick every so often, I think it's cool, and I have a repository on YouTube where all my cool things live, so you can go and you can watch them and you can go, wow, he's not full of shit, you know, he did that, that's cool, right? And I think that is the best way to do it, you know. It's the person who says, you know, oh, have you ever played Dark Souls before? You go, yeah, I've played Dark Souls, it's pretty cool. You don't go, yeah, I've done this, I've got 3,000 hours on it, I've got 10,000 hours on it, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that, because you just come across like somebody with super AIDS, and nobody wants to get near people with super AIDS because you die in a second. But some people don't seem to realise that, and I don't know if it's antisocial behaviour, I don't know if it's just like delusions of grandeur, I don't really know what it is. So it leads to these situations where people say like, as a Souls vet, speaking as a Souls vet, And whenever anybody says, guys, speaking as a Souls vet, you know whatever they say after that is completely and utterly full of shit. It's just like when people say, to be honest. To be honest, guys, being completely honest, all that tells me is that you're a fucking liar. You're a liar, and you've been lying so much that you have to specify when you stop. Nobody says, you know, in all honesty, to tell the truth. No one says that. This is not real language. This is audible pausing, audible stalling. Look at the iframes on that button, by the way. See that? That was cool. And then he despawns! How annoying is that, dude? Oh, I wanted to kill that guy. But you get these wonderful people that start sentences like that, and those people on YouTube videos that start sentences like, I'm a triple Souls Platinum veteran, like that fucking means anything, dude. My dog could get the Platinum on Dark Souls. It's not that hard, you know? If that's the height, the top of your mountain, the plateau of your gaming prowess is getting a Platinum on a fucking Dark Souls game, that's awesome, dude, but I wouldn't wave it around so eagerly because in the grand scheme of the universe, it ain't shit. In the grand scheme of lots of things, video games are for kids, right? And all they exist to do is steal time and get mums angry at dads. That's pretty much all it really is when you boil it down. But we value it because we like it and we take it and hold it to a higher esteem and we get a bit more invested in it and whatnot. But this person that said that to my friend who did Soul Level 1 on Elden Ring, which is very hard to do if you've not tried to do it, I went to the channel to see what this person had done. And lo and behold, I found this Alan Wake video. So, as much as I'd like to have a conversation with this person and really pick their brain and maybe try and help them, even though it's not really my place to do that, like, you know, try to elaborate on perhaps what they're missing or what they're not seeing, I know that they don't care. I know that for anybody to behave the way that they have done in that one engagement of go onto someone's video who's done something actually legitimately challenging, diminish the value of their challenging achievement, and then grandstand your own achievement, which is the equivalent to turning on the fucking oven in real life. Like, there's no difficulty there, you know? And when you come across a person who is that confrontational, and that delusional, and that unskilled, it tells me that no matter what I said, I'm not getting through to that person. And not that I want to get through to that person, because I don't. I am a firm believer, guys, that there are some people we simply can't save. There are people who are destined to be worm farms, and there are people who are destined to do great things. I am destined to work at Tesco stacking shelves and forever be obscure and unheard of. But you guys might do something cool, like curing cancer or doing amazing things, creating technology that lets us see the stars. And I will use that technology in between beating my wife and watching American Gladiators. But I know one thing, and that is that person, that triple Platinum Souls veteran, they are not destined for anything except for jacking off a chicken. Because that kind of mind will not allow itself to achieve anything. And if you learn anything from my videos, guys, or anything from anything that you do in life, learn that humility and actual hard work are the keys to everything. And also learn that Poets of the Fall are badass dudes who constantly come back in Remedy games and play awesome songs over cool little encounters. And this encounter here is a lot easier than it should be because the enemies cannot spawn on those stairs, so you can put your back to it and absolutely decimate them. But here's an activity for people who've made it this far, guys. If you're an hour into this video right now listening to my idiotic ramblings, I want you to leave a comment that says the craziest thing you've read on YouTube. What was the comment on YouTube that you came across randomly while browsing that literally broke your brain? I'm curious if anybody's got some good ones. What is the thing that was so ridiculous you had to copy it and paste it and tweet about it with a nice picture of Picard face palming? Which I do that on the regular, actually, and my Discord is full of tons of posts like that because there are just these wonderful nuggets of absolute galaxy brain level madness, isn't there, on YouTube? People who say things... Like, I saw somebody the other day, I tweeted this, who said that on Elden Ring, there's no difference between being level 1 and being level 177. The bosses are about gimmicks, you just have to learn the gimmick. Which I just thought was absolutely hilarious. Does anybody know what the gimmick of Margot is? Can anybody tell me what Margot's gimmick is? I'd love to know. I mean, I suppose you could say using the shackle, but is that a gimmick, really? That doesn't seem like the boss has a gimmick. That seems like there's a crutch pussy perk for people to use who can't fight him, right? Like, I just find that... What is Radagon's gimmick? Anybody want to tell me Radagon's gimmick? I'd love to know. Is it the fact that he can hit you from any range at any time and then proceed to hit you 50 more times with barely any stop? Like, where's the gimmick there? Is it that he doesn't use conditioner? Like, I just don't get it. But this right here is the checkpoint I wanted to mention, guys. At the beginning of this area, when you get out of the car, you might notice that I skipped the fight and I ran all the way into the light source to get that checkpoint. Whenever I got hit, and I got hit a few times because it's quite a claustrophobic encounter, it kept putting me back to the checkpoint at the start of this area's introduction, and I saw that rotating camera like 5 times and I said, fuck it. I was really, really pissed off and really annoyed. The tricky part about this too as well is, because it starts you kind of fresh, I don't think you inherit the ammunition. So if you do kill everything here at the start too, you run out of bullets really quickly and then you're kind of defenseless. So this is one of the harder fights in the entire game. This might be the most difficult fight in this project. And unfortunately, I pretty much ran past it, which I didn't feel too good about at the time. But there comes a point when you're recording, guys, where you either embrace the grind and realise it's going to take a while, or you become okay with half-ass measures. And I'm not the type of person that ever really wants to truly take half-ass measures, but if it's a bad checkpoint, I know how to bad checkpoints pretty quickly now. I just don't have the patience I once had, and I didn't even have it then either, you know. I will do anything if you give me a good checkpoint, but if you give me a bad one, there's nothing that sours me quicker than that. And I really can't complain about any of the other checkpoints in this entire experience. And I played this on the good old games version, by the way, guys. This was the GOG version. I had almost no problems with it, and all my settings pretty much transferred over from the original Alan Wake. And it was just an absolute pleasure to do this, you know. There's a lot of games right now. Oh, this gets really hairy. I remember this fight. Watch this. This is the closest I get to being pressured, because there's a ton of these guys. And I can't remember the name of these jobbers with the sickles, but there is a name of these particular ones. These are the fast guys, and they like to flank you. Are they called flankers? I think that might be their name. But this right here, this is some straight up Geometry Wars kiting right here. This is Call of Duty Black Ops 1 zombies, when you're in a real claustrophobic area in a tiny room with a big old train. That's the closest thing you'll see in American Nightmare right there. And then we have the big encounter. He throws 2 of the large ogre creatures at you with the chainsaws, and it plays a song here for some reason. And it's the song that was playing on Mr. Scratch's videos where he's torturing people in the hotel. And I have to say, guys, I'm really annoyed that you don't fight Mr. Scratch. I don't know why there's no proper boss fight. Admittedly, Alan Wake never really did boss fights, and when it did do them, they were terrible. So maybe it's a blessing that they didn't do it that way. Because if you think about it, both of my DLCs, right? Both of my Alan Wake DLCs, the no damage runs were ruined on the final fight because I couldn't do them. Because the resources weren't good enough for how demanding the fights were. If those fights didn't exist, those projects would not have stars next to them saying that I failed, basically. And even the first game, you know, if you don't use the flare gun, you can't kill the final boss. And to me, a boss should be able to be defeated with every single option in the game. And this is one of the areas where I wish Alan Wake was slightly different, because it's the only critique I have, pretty much outside of, you know, some fundamental combat stuff. I just really wish they would have enabled you to have an option there. And I stayed at the end of that game shining lights on buses for about 40 minutes, and it just never ends. Whereas this one, it doesn't have a major sequence, it just kind of ends. And it's really frustrating too, but as a guide maker, it's a breath of fresh air, because I don't have to worry. And I tried a decent amount of time on both of those sequences in the DLCs, but they were bad, guys. And a friend of the channel did no damage runs of those DLCs, which was really, really cool. So big congrats to that guy, he finally managed to do it. But handgun only, you've really got to bring all the supplies you can. And the way I fought some of those rooms without skipping them, I'd have to play through the entire thing again, skipping almost all the encounters to get back to it. And I just don't think that that's the spirit of the run, you know? And I'd rather have a failed run than a successful run that's essentially just a supercut of different runs put together to make it look like I had a perfect run. And it's funny that I say that, because that used to be what I really liked to do. Like, back in the old days, I would supercut everything, and that would just be the run. And I was really comfortable in doing it, and that was the most fun to me. But at the moment, I've kind of gone off doing that. And I don't honestly know why. It's interesting, isn't it, how you change over time? I was thinking about that the other day when I was looking at some old Dark Souls 1 footage. I had a video of me that I sent off to Epic Namebro 10 years ago for one of his challenges when the DLC came out. And it was to beat Manus with a bunch of stipulations. And the submission that I gave, I took damage in it. And it's because in those days I didn't do no damage. So the idea of taking damage wasn't a big deal. It was just part of the game, you know? So I end up sending this submission, which, in all fairness, it's not a bad submission, but I look at it now and I just go, who the fuck is this scrub? Why am I watching this garbage? Because it's not who I am today, you know? I would not have submitted that now. And I do think that that's really cool, because you get to see where you've evolved. You get to see the difference between who you were then and who you are now. This guy really wants me dead. Did you see that, dude? That was the sickest tracking charge I think I've ever seen them do. And look how cool this is. This right here is proving that you can corral and shepherd Taken in Alan Wake. Because you've got a ton of guys coming for you, you've got to keep your head on a swivel, you're stunning them with the torch, you're moving around, you're managing stamina, you're managing batteries. This right here is a really cool sequence to show what your abilities are. This is the kind of stuff I dream about as well. I love when a game isn't afraid to demand you to prove that you know what you're doing. And if you take this slow and if you use the items, you can take down a bunch of dudes here and have a much easier time. But look how cool this is. This is legitimately quite interesting. And other than just the enjoyment of playing the game, I did think that American Nightmare was kind of flat. I didn't want to talk about it too much, guys, because I didn't want to bum anybody out, but I don't like the levels. I don't like repeating the levels. I don't really like the story. I like the gameplay, and I like the shooting, and I like Alan Wake, but compared to the first game, this is not something that I'm ever going to be in a huge rush to come back to play, other than for those wonderful arcade missions, because then you just get to do the combat without any of the restrictions and any of the oddities. But I think we can all agree, right, when it comes to Alan Wake, you want to play the full game. It is a very special game, and Alan Wake 2 comes out in about a year, and I can't wait to cover it, guys. I can't wait to share it and see what I can do with that game. If it's half as good as it could be, we could be in for an absolute treat, and you could get some of the best videos I've ever made. And there's nothing more exciting than being excited for a game and then being excited for the potential of what you can do with it when it comes to sharing it with your community. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.